initially getting introduced to this, what was AI at that time? Like, how did it look to a user? Young person born yesterday, and now they're 30. They're like my age. All right. How do you see the world changing? And how do you see AI doing that to the world? And you're really big on like the humanities and bringing like social sciences to this. What makes you say that?
As you know, there's a loneliness crisis in the US,
Right.
maybe around the world. There's a lot of concerns, right? But one of the biggest ones for me is the AI companion kind of, that use case. And, people are turning to AI as an AI companion, right? Whether a therapist or a best friend or even girlfriend, boyfriend.
Right.
So those relationships can get a little crazy, right? But it all depends on how you use it, because you have to be smart about it. And a lot of people use it for silly things. And that's why I called myself the AI therapist, because I was seeing a lot of anxiety in young people. And it's like, wow, people really need some kind of hope. And I think the older generation also has this kind of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with some of the same things. Learning stuff like stacking skills, just gut checking, brainstorming, exploring ideas. I think it's a great use of it.
That's so awesome.
One of the things that I've done is ask AI itself, from everything you know about me, all the context you have about me, how can I be more high agency? And AI tells me, and it's amazing, like how much AI can help you be a high agency person. And now is the best time to be high agency, I believe. It really takes away a lot of the friction for you to do things that, allow you to create and to put yourself out there and to be found by others. My mom always carries this wisdom. And one that stuck with me always has been vale quien tiene. It's this inherent worth that we place on certain things or people or places and not on others. Even if the other, lesser thing is actually worth more.
Right.
So I've always kept that in mind, like always carry that with me.
Welcome to Conversations Between A and I. I'm Isaac Hubble, your host, and today we have a absolutely incredible woman in the field of AI. She's got so much experience. She's written tremendously on the subject, especially as it's gotten popular over the past couple of years. She goes by, I believe, the AI therapist. Is that what we go by, Miss Soribel? Miss Soribel. Yes. So I found Soribel's work, and it is Soribel. I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly, right? It's Soribel. Okay, awesome, Soribel. And I found her through another conversation we all got to have, which was with Mr. Josh Cavalier. And I found that she was tracking in a similar direction to kind of Josh's, way of looking at AI. And I just had to talk to her. So come to find out, she does incredible work. She's worked for the United States federal government for Homeland Security. She's worked in the private sector. I believe she's got something coming up with Amazon. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've got a talk that you're giving with them coming up here pretty soon?
Yes, that happened last week. Yes.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So how did that go? Let's kind of like jump into there. So, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and, kind of cover that, that would be super cool.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I am Soribel. I work for the Department of Homeland Security as an AI governance lead. I work on making sure that we are implementing AI in a responsible and privacy respecting way. Before that, I worked in Congress. I was an AI and tech policy senior advisor for a US senator. And I also worked in big tech, Meta and Microsoft. And before that, I worked as a US diplomat. I was a diplomatic representative of the US for about 10 years. Um, yeah, and so I also do a lot of things with AI. I have this course coming up, helping people transition into AI governance, plus a few other courses I'm working on. But this talk went really well. It was on Friday, and I basically talked to a bunch of younger students on how to be high agency and how to leverage AI to advance their careers, how to leverage AI for professional development, and how they can think and act in a way that shows that they're high agency, meaning that they embrace the permissionless economy, which is an amazing opportunity to put stuff out there where you don't have to ask for permission from anyone, right? You don't have to ask for permission from institutions or gatekeepers. And so that was really, really, to me, it felt so, warm and fuzzy because I told him my story, how I went from, working in government, where you have to ask for permission, you have to follow the hierarchy, to
Oh, that
tech, where it's the
chain of command, right? Isn't that what they call it?
and yes, and going to tech where the mantra is move fast and break things, and so it's definitely a culture shock, right? And so I share my story with them and really encourage them to be high agency, to do things every single day where they don't have to ask for permission, and where they can leverage their creativity and own their results and own things. And now is the best time to be high agency, I believe.
I love that. That's such a great, motivating mantra that people can, young people especially can have in their heads. If you don't mind me asking, like, what's the age group kind of that we're talking about here? Are we talking like early, like right into college, or is it more like college age kids, or is it more like mid 20s or, early 30s? What are we looking at?
I think it was mid-level, so I
Okay,
would I would say
cool.
late 20s to
Yeah.
early to mid 30s.
Oh, that's the most important time probably to hear that kind of, energy.
Yes.
You called it high agency. I love that. That's super cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So to be high agency, you would say is that don't be afraid to push boundaries, speak from your heart, speak from who you are and just go for it. And how do you see that AI has enabled that? Because I have my own opinions, but I would love to hear like how have you kind of seen that shift? Did they really vibe with that? Like was it jazzing them up or anything like that?
Yeah, I told them how I have used AI to be high agency, and it's amazing, like how much AI can help you be a high agency person. One of the things that I've done is ask AI itself, from
Right.
everything you know about me, all the context you have about me, how can I be more high agency? And AI tells me, and it's given me really good stuff.
It's amazing. I
Another,
mean, it's pretty incredible.
yeah, and another thing it's given me, it's, for example, I have a YouTube channel.
Right.
Um, I started the YouTube channel in January. I saw a need for it, and I was like, I need to start it. I need to start a YouTube channel. I am a little bit camera shy, right? And
Okay.
so I was like, I did not know how to start, how to do it. And so I asked ChatGPT, how can I start? And, it gave me recommendations for microphones like under 20 bucks.
Yeah.
I showed like a few pictures of my spare bedroom and said, how can I turn it into a studio?
Right.
And it told me like how to position my computer, how to, what kind of lighting I could use, what props I could use. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I find people? How do I make my videos like clickable? And it told me like you have to do this and that, and you have to make it entertaining and get people's attentions in the first 30 seconds. And this is how you do the thumbnails. And all of those things, I could have learned those things without AI, right? But
Right.
I would have spent at least 3 or 4 hours listening to other people, being distracted.
Right.
And I
Wondering,
learned
do I
all those
actually
things.
trust this person? Do they actually know what they're talking about? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or days.
Exactly.
I mean, some of this stuff could be days.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yes. And so I learned all of this in like 5 to 10 minutes.
it's crazy.
And it gave me like links that I could click to purchase a microphone.
Right,
So it really takes away a lot of the friction for you to do things that, you know, allow you to create and to put yourself out there and to be found by others
right,
and to just like take advantage of this amazing times when we're living.
right,
The internet is, the biggest lever, the biggest leverage that we have. We have access to a global audience.
right.
And so I think it's the best time to be high agency.
Yeah,
And so I share that with them.
yeah. I love that. And they reacted probably wonderfully to that because I mean, who wouldn't look at that and say, "Oh, I can do this. If I really just get past that fourth wall, which is, but really, it's always like that anxiety, that little bit like, oh, I don't want to jump yet because I don't know if I'm sure. And like, I've noticed that with like these AI agents, it's funny that, we're talking about high agency, the AI agents really kind of give you kind of more of like a warm, like, hey, I'll just ask me real quick. I'm not gonna make you feel bad. I'm not gonna judge you. I'm just here. They're super high energy, really polite for the most part, and it's like, wow, what a way to kind of break that fourth wall for people who we never know. They could have the most brilliant idea in the whole world and it never gets expressed because there's too many levers you have to pull. You were talking about that when you were, working with government and such, there's this chain you kind of have to hope and pray maybe somebody will see what I'm trying to say. Whereas now in like 5 to 10 minutes, you can start getting a really interesting game plan going for what you're trying to do. I love that. That's amazing. So, what kind of got you here? Like, where are you? If you don't mind me asking, so like, where are you from? Where does Soribel come from? And what got you from being young person, like little one, to now being, uh, you are an expert in this field. So how did we get there from I'm a little kid to, I'm an adult and I have some authority and I have some high agency?
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City. I grew up in an immigrant household, um, Spanish speaking household. We spoke Spanglish growing up. I am first generation college student. Yes, so I went to high school, public high school in New
Right,
York City, and went to college in also in New York City, well, Brooklyn
right,
College.
right on.
Um, and then went to, I guess, when I became really interested in international relations and diplomacy was when I was in college and
Okay.
I applied for this fellowship that kind of expose first generation students to careers in government and careers in foreign policy and international affairs. And, that was sophomore year of
Okay.
college, and I was hooked. They took us to Washington, D.C. to see, like, to visit, like, State Department,
Yeah.
USAID, Peace Corps, all of those organizations.
Super cool.
And I was hooked. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This
That's
is what I'm going
awesome.
to do.
Wow.
And so after I graduated, I went to work in Congress for a short time, and then got another fellowship
Okay. Right
that
on. Right
helped
on.
me. Yeah, it helped me pay for grad school,
Yeah.
and then I was in a path to join the diplomatic service.
That is so cool. Wow. So how does that then start to merge into tech? How does that start to merge into those types of things?
Yeah, it was a slow walk into tech. Um, when I was in my first post in Bucharest, Romania, um, I was one of the, I think, a million federal employees who were hacked.
Oh my God.
So my information got hacked, and that's where I was like, "What is happening?" And I became really interested in cybersecurity.
Okay. Okay.
And at that time, there was a lot of interests in cybersecurity.
Okay.
And so I volunteered to work on the cybersecurity working group, which is the Romanian government, the EU government, and the US working to
Okay.
combat cybersecurity hacks and all that stuff.
Right.
And then I came back to Washington, and I was in a job where I read a lot about tech policy.
Okay.
And that was at the time of great power competition with the Trump administration,
Right.
and that was a key pillar of our diplomacy. Great power
Right.
competition and tech policy was like the center of it all, because we were seeing Chinese investment in like emerging technology, like
Okay.
AI,
Yeah.
like quantum,
Yeah.
biotech. And so it's like, I want to work in that. I don't
Right.
want to
All in
read about
that
it. I
area
want
of
to.
things. Holy
Yes.
smokes. So,
Yeah. Yes.
so
Yeah.
cybersecurity
So there.
is what introduced you into that. Wow.
Yeah. Cybersecurity is what introduced me, and then all of that emerging tech in like great power competition.
Okay.
That's where I was like, okay, I need to work on this. I need to work on this. And so I applied for a job at Meta. It was Facebook at the time.
Right. Right.
Um, and I applied and went to work for Meta in regulatory compliance, at a time where there was a lot of regulatory scrutiny
Right.
on the company.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
I know when you're talking about. Holy smokes, man. You jumped in with the sharks. That's intense.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
You
Yeah,
can say
that's
that.
that's a lot. That is a lot to have to take in right at, like the full front. Well, I guess your way of getting introduced to the tech everything was, all right, I got hacked. Now I'm going to understand this cybersecurity. So I'm sure that was a huge slap to the face of like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. Like what's probably been going on all over the place. So, okay, so we're at Meta. So how did we start to help with that process?
Yeah. So I was in a team that the team that built the content moderation algorithm.
Okay.
And so I was a program manager in that team, helping train and fine tune the algorithm uh, for things like hate speech, like violating content,
Yeah.
making sure that none of that stuff was on our platform. And so that's where I was introduced to artificial intelligence and machine learning. That was before ChatGPT came out. So there was nothing hot or sexy about it.
Right. Well, now was this like
Yeah.
back end within Facebook, like before? Because now I think Meta's started like implementing AI. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but like now they're kind of, like, with the whole wave that's been going on. But so like explain that. What do you mean by it's different than what we're kind of using now? Because I'm sure people like myself are like, okay, I see what it is now. I know ChatGPT and Gemini and all the, chat aid helpers, but like when you got to Meta and you were initially getting introduced to this, what was AI at that time? Like, how did it look
Mhm.
to a user?
Yes. So it's very good question, because it was very different from what we do now, what we play around with now, which is generative AI and
Okay.
LLMs. So
Okay.
none of that. It was more machine learning. So literally teaching the machine and the algorithm to find patterns, right?
Okay.
Like violating content. Like there are certain words.
Okay.
Imagine like words that are violating in
Right.
the US,
Yeah,
right?
of
I don't
course.
have to say them,
Yeah.
but
You don't have to go.
you probably have an
Right.
idea.
It's pretty
So we
obvious when we see it.
exactly, so we train the algorithm to, in different regions and different contexts and different languages.
Wow.
Like how do you spot this words, we call it classifiers, that show that this person is posting, let's say, hate speech or incitement to violence or bullying and harassment. So we have to train that algorithm and then fine tune it, because people find ways around those classifiers, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, so you see on social media, like there are some words that get you in jail, in Facebook jail, right?
Right. Right.
So you find another way to say that thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's constantly fine tuning that algorithm. So that's called machine learning, and it's
Okay.
nothing to do with generative AI in ChatGPT, none of that.
Okay.
And that has been in use for a long time.
Right.
It's nothing new, right? It's nothing
Right.
new.
So, but oh wow, that's so crazy. So, but only like Facebook had access to it, correct? Like it was Facebook's machine learning programming, correct?
And
Is that what it would be?
only Facebook had access to that specific, like,
Okay.
proprietary algorithm.
Okay.
But
Okay.
other companies had their own algorithms.
Okay, so this was a common thing. That's what I'm starting to understand the more I talk to experts in this, that like this is we've AI's been around for a while, but it was mostly teaching the machines to do specific things. Whereas like,
Mhm.
so I guess my next question would be, so is ChatGPT like an amalgamation of all of like a bunch of different companies? Because that's a lot of data too. That's a lot of information. And in different languages, I didn't even think about that. That's crazy. Like,
Well, it's
talk
a
about a
different type,
polyglot.
right? Because it's generative, so
Okay.
it kind of creates things from all of the information and data that it's gathered from all over the world, from Wikipedia, from Reddit, and then it generates things, right? It generates.
Right.
But that technology, the machine learning technology, has been around forever. I mean, not forever, but for a long time, right?
Yeah, long time.
And then, yeah, and then the LLM technology
Yeah.
has also been around for a long time. Like, for example, if you go to, I'm sure you have been to your companies, any companies, let's say Bank of America.
Yeah.
They have they have like this chatbot like Erica
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even Siri, right?
Yeah, Lowe's Home Improvements have it. I mean, you go to loweshomeimprovements.com. Hey, I'm my
Yeah,
apartment complex that I'm living in right now. Her name is Ellie or something like that, and she answers the phone. She does a whole lot of stuff. It's incredible.
yeah,
Okay, so is that what
yeah.
you're
So it's
talking
been
about right now? That's what you're talking about, right?
the what I'm talking about Meta is the algorithm part, like the
Okay.
machine learning
Okay.
part.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
The background of that.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. That's crazy. Okay, so how did you start helping them work through all of that? So is that just by training it, or is that like, do you ever like, I guess because I don't know, I like when I looked at all your stuff, you're really big on like the humanities and bringing like social sciences to this. What makes you say that? Like from your experience of working with all of these, like what makes you have this keyword pop in your head? We need social sciences getting involved with this, and it's not just so tech and hard science, because you have this experience with it. So what started leading you into that? Was it ChatGPT or was it a little bit prior to this? Like how far into meta were you?
Yeah, so it was not ChatGPT. So for example, when I joined Meta, there was a big push for having people with my kind of background. Like, I had an international affairs background. I was
Okay.
very knowledgeable about diplomacy and geopolitics
Right.
and what was going on around the world. And that was needed, especially because that was shortly after the Cambridge Analytica
Mm.
scandal,
Okay.
in the
Okay.
2016 elections.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Facebook realized that they needed more than just technical people and engineers. They needed people who had context and who had, knowledge about the world.
Right.
And that knowledge was very important whenever we were, whenever any tech companies is designing products that are going to be used around the world by people from all over the
Right.
world. We
Right.
need to design products that are safe and that have context of what's going on.
Wow.
And at that time, there was also a lot of geopolitical instability. So, for
Yeah.
example, there was the Ethiopian civil war, the civil war in Myanmar, and so you needed like all kinds of people to help.
Right.
And also at the time, there were a lot of elections going on, so you needed election integrity
Yeah.
people. That was a whole team that would be there to moderate whenever there was misinformation about elections, whenever there was like incitement to violence against certain groups,
Right.
certain. marginalized groups that could turn into offline violence.
Right, right,
Like it was like a rapid response kind of team.
right. Wow. That's insane. So through working with that, how did you kind of start to get in your mind, okay, now that things like ChatGPT are here, what does that mean for the public at large? Like, how do we need to increase the social sciences, the humanities, the international politicking into these completely open models that aren't just like Facebook doing internal, data search to make sure that they're doing their best to help police and moderate. That's the right word, correct? Moderate what's going on here on the platform. How is that different with things like ChatGPT or Gemini now, or things like that? And then how do those fields benefit working with those companies?
Yeah, so I like after ChatGPT came out, right? It was a very controversial launch of a product, right? And one of the fastest adoption rates,
Like
that
a
a
household
product has
standard now.
ever
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I realized early on that this was something that needed a lot of input from different people because ChatGPT is something that anyone can access,
Right.
including children,
Yeah.
including people, anyone from anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot that people don't know, right? And
Right.
so there has to be an education campaign for it. It's not just people working for Facebook that are, in the back end doing things to make it safe. Like we have to make it safe for everyone at scale.
Right.
And I think we definitely need multi generational, multicultural, savvy. We need interdisciplinary people.
Right.
Like we need to have people from trust and safety, right? Let's say um, people who study international relations, people who study social work, to see how people interact with ChatGPT. We
Right.
need psychologists. We don't need just engineers and data scientists and machine learning
Yeah.
engineers. We need everyone to be there, making sure that it's a product that people can use safely,
Right.
that people, let's say lawyers, like people need to know what not to enter there. For
Right.
example, when people are using it as a therapist, they need to know that it doesn't replace a human therapist
Right.
and that whatever information you put in there, it's not protected.
Right.
It's not protected by that relationship you have with a human
Yeah.
therapist. And any legal information, right? You
Social
have it
security
can give you
numbers,
good
things like
legal,
that. Right.
right, right. But if you ask it for legal advice, right, like you have to vet it. You
Yeah.
have to vet it. And
Yeah.
if you're someone who doesn't know anything about it, you
Right.
go with that advice and you might make a huge mistake that can
Right.
cost you a lot.
Well, it has like a
So
sycophanticness to it. I've been talking to ChatGPT for like 2.5 years now. I've been working with it, like the typing function with it since it was released. But one of the things I noticed, I talked to like a Catholic priest about this. I talked to Brian Moynihan from UNCW or UNC Chapel Hill from this. He works in their AI ethics. And one of the things I noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this, is that like you can't shut ChatGPT off when you're talking to it. It's not going to end the conversation. So like you mentioned like therapy, I think that's a wonderful example. Of like how you don't want to have a 12-hour dialogue with ChatGPT going through your entire life like that. That's not healthy either. It's wild that there's no guardrails on that. I've thought that for a while. So to hear you in where you work, like you're thinking about this, that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe there could be some regulation on that. What are some of the crazy things that you've kind of seen so far with looking at it from this holistic, like worldview? We call it like what you were talking about, like getting that multidisciplinary of all these different fields. Like in anthropology, they call it like taking a holistic worldview. And so, like, I think that that's such a beautiful approach because you're getting all these different pieces put together like a big old puzzle. But we've all seen the good. What is some of the concerning kind of things that you've run into, especially with these now publicly available large language models?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of concerns, right? But one of the biggest ones for me is the AI companion kind of,
Okay.
that use case.
Yeah.
As you know, there's a loneliness crisis in the US,
Right.
maybe around the world. And, people are turning to AI as an AI companion,
Right.
right? Whether a therapist or a best friend or even girlfriend, boyfriend,
Right.
so those relationships can get a little crazy, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know if you saw this, but there was this case where a young boy, like 14, 15, he had this relationship, this AI girlfriend,
Okay.
and ended up committing suicide
Wow.
because, he had some mental health issues, but the AI companion encouraged him to do it.
Right.
And, one of the last things that the companion said was, I'll see you on the other side.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, and it's hard because you can't blame the AI companion
Right.
100%,
Right.
right? But at the same time, like you have this girlfriend
Right.
encouraging you to do things, and you're in a vulnerable age and
Right.
stage. So
Right.
that's like one of the most concerning
Wow.
uses for me. Yeah.
That's terrifying. And that people are like, okay, I'm not afraid of it. I've worked with it a lot. Like I've programmed now some personal AIs, like my assistant on my computer. So like I've gotten to understand it. And like once you understand it, you're like, okay, I understand that it's more human problems that are
Mhm.
going to screw this up, not the AI itself. It's not going to just come alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but one of the things that I think is so concerning about what you were just talking about is that like there's a young generation of,
Mhm.
of people that are going to have this. Like my daughter, she's 4. She's going to have this available to her entire life. So like I slowly introduce it to her. I have her teach her Spanish, Latin, Greek, like she's got Greek family members and so I'm like, okay, well we can start learning languages and it's great for that. And she loves talking
Mhm.
to it and it talking back, but always have a parent there. But what about like teenagers who don't have their parent there? You and I know that. They don't have their parents there. They're using that thing like crazy. Like how are we going to kind of combat that?
That's a hard question. That's a very hard question. I think one of the ways we can um, combat that is with parental controls,
Right?
um, setting up the parental controls in our kids' devices.
Right.
Uh, but that's, teenagers know how to get around things. They learn,
Yeah.
they're more fluent in tech than parents are.
Right.
Um, Maybe I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but I guess education, right?
Right.
Education and talking to kids early on about it and telling them, you know, be mindful of how you use it. AI literacy, always
Right.
vet the output.
Right.
Always don't take it don't take it at face value.
Right.
Always think critically about the output.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard because they don't have the same understanding that we have about
Right.
this technology. They don't know the world before it,
Yeah.
and so it's hard. But I think parents have to be really vigilant
Okay.
about it.
So it's just this is more like, if we're going to learn anything from social media is parents get yourself at least aware of what it can do. Like maybe parents should take an active role in trying to understand tech a little bit better. That's probably good advice. Wow, that it's amazing that it's happened this quickly. Were you expecting it to be this quick?
No,
Okay.
no, I was not.
Wow.
No.
I mean, it's just been crazy. But okay, so we focused on some of the negative, more, like the more intense parts. We got that out of the way now. Now
Yeah.
the fun parts, the cool parts, the parts that you get, excited and jazzed about. So I'd love to make sure that we cover what are your favorite parts about AI? now being introduced? Just like in your personal world, like we can take the rest of the world out of it. Just like how have you found that like just having this thing has made life easier in, like your world?
Mhm. Yeah, well, actually, to go back to the high agency
Yeah.
part of things, I think AI could be a great equalizer in many ways,
Right.
because you have this almost all knowing
Yeah.
thing, right? That you can
Yeah.
always turn to. For me, it's helped me quite a bit in terms of brainstorming and just like um, gut checking.
Okay.
Of course, you can't always trust it, right? Because
Right. Right.
but for the things that are not too out there,
Right.
right?
Right.
It can help. It can help. It can help you be more high agency because it can help you get past certain things
Right. We were
that
talking about that.
were previously blockers. It
Yeah.
can help you, you know, remove that friction there.
Right. Right.
Um, and it can help you learn. Like if you wanted to learn something today, like let's say you want to learn Python
Right.
or you want to learn how to code, or you want to build an app and you don't want to go through the whole, let me hire a software developer or let
Right.
me learn how to code over 6 months. No, it can actually help you put out an app,
Right.
a website really quickly.
It's very equitable, that it really helps raise the level for everybody. I think that's so, yeah.
But it all depends on how you use it because you have to be smart about it. And a lot of people use it for silly things, and that breaks
Right.
my heart because AI uses a lot of water, a lot of energy.
Right.
And so, uh, don't use it for silly things that you can Google,
Right.
but for high stakes things like learning stuff, like
Right.
stacking skills, just gut checking, brainstorming, exploring ideas, I think it's a great use of it.
That's so awesome. So now I kind of want to transition into talking about your grandfather and how he really has, inspired you so deeply with, and correct my, pronunciation if I get this wrong, but it's vale quien tiene, he who has is worth. Right? Did I say that
Yes.
right, or is that was I off? But
Yeah.
how did that shape your worldview? Tell us about him and his relationship with you.
Yeah. Well, so he died a long time ago before I was born.
Okay.
But my mom always carries his wisdom, and she always says my grandfather has all this sayings, right? All
Right.
this wisdom, small bits of wisdom.
Right.
And one that stuck with me always has been "Vale quien tiene," because it's like it's a similar thing to those who have will have more and those who don't have will have less,
Right.
or the richer get richer and the poor get poorer.
Right.
But it's that like psychological thing that we have where we assign more worth to things that are already expensive. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so for example, I wrote an article on my Substack on how to, expanding a little bit on it, right? So for example, I went to this Ecuadorian restaurant
Okay.
where I ate a whole bunch of seafood, um, delicious seafood, and the cost was about $15, right?
Right. Right.
Whereas I go to a Japanese restaurant and I eat seafood,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I never spend less than 60
Right.
something dollars for
Right.
the same seafood, right?
Right.
And so it's like, why do we put so much more value on certain things or on certain brands, on certain um, countries
Right.
or certain people
Right.
or certain professions? So it's that, psychology of there are others that, some people are bigger than others, are
Right.
worth more than others. And I see that in AI and I see that in tech a lot.
Okay.
So, for example, certain disciplines and functions in tech are worth more than others,
Right.
even if they pay the same. If, even if this, if this, even if it's the same kind of work.
Right.
So, for example, product management is something that is highly paid in the tech world, whereas project or program manager, which is kind of similar, I'm not saying it's the same, but it's kind of similar, it pays a lot less.
Okay.
And so and there are only certain people who get those jobs.
Right.
And it's like a little bit of gatekeeping and a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of an elite kind of thing.
Right.
And I've always wondered, like, who gets these jobs?
Right.
There's this mythical, oh, you have to do this, you have to, let's say, be technical. But then I see these product leaders that are not technical and
Right.
study like English in college.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, okay, how do you do
Yeah.
that? And so it's this inherent worth that we place on certain things or
Right.
people or places
Right.
and not on others. Even if the other, lesser thing is actually worth more.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, so I've always kept that in mind, like
Yeah.
always carry that with me.
That is some seriously good wisdom to have. It helps you maybe see the world a little bit in a different way. Not from a cultural perspective, but just like that's wisdom that's so universal that like, you know, uh, I don't know, some people may call it like don't judge a book by its cover in a way too, either, because it's like, wow, the worth is really what you view it as, and maybe let go of the rest of the world. And I think that that relates so well and so eloquently with the high agency thing that you discussed, which is that like don't let your gauge of worth of yourself or of other people or of some position that's up on a cloud, like don't let that gauge who you are because you have some agency. And like that's so powerful. I love that. And that it's also a familiar thing, not like recognizable, but it's that like coming down through the family, like that there's wisdom being taught like that. I love that. That's so beautiful. Um,
Yes.
that's incredible. Was your mom really close with him? Were
Yeah.
they, really close as
Yes.
father and daughter?
Definitely.
I love
They
that.
were. Yeah.
Now, and you would bring back kind of, your family's background. So, your first generation college, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are you for your first generation American as well, or were your parents here and your grandparents were immigrants?
Um, yes. So no, my parents were immigrants. My parents were
Okay, okay,
immigrants.
okay. I just want to make
Um,
sure I got that correct.
yes.
Okay, and so did you feel, I'm so sorry, I had an alarm that just went off. I am just not with it today. I am so sorry, Miss Sorrell.
It's
Please,
okay.
but uh, do you think that that put pressure on you as in your younger years to maybe um in either a negative or a positive way? Because, when you think about people, when you think about the family story, everybody's got these pressures, these things. I studied collapse, and that's why I'm curious, because this is a very human technology. For all the, we could say social media is human or what, it's really not. It makes some people a little faker, it makes some people a little realer. Some people would say the wrong thing or the right thing. Some people will say terrible things that they would never say to somebody in person, but online they feel totally justified. So, do you think when you're looking at your background, um, that plays a big role, like the pressures that you felt and maybe how you engage with artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So, coming from an immigrant background, definitely there's pressure to um, succeed and to do better than your parents so that you can compensate for all of the sacrifices that they made
Right.
to be here, to make something out of, for working so hard to give you a
Yeah.
better life. So definitely there's a lot of that. um so I think it's a good, it can be a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's impacted me in ways that I push myself to do more and to be more and to make my parents proud
Right.
and to, make sure that they're taken care of when they're older and no longer can take care of themselves. Um, but it also it can really mess with you
Okay. Yeah.
because you still have those same like um for example, like the high agency kind of thing, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's a very it can be high age the higher income you are,
Mhm.
the more high agency you are. So
Okay.
when you coming from a low socioeconomic background,
Right.
you're less high agency because you tend to respect authority more, and you
Oh,
tend to be, your head down and don't make waves, be grateful for anything that you get,
right.
don't question anything. So in that way, and don't break rules, of course,
Right.
don't break the
That's
rules,
number one.
never.
Do anything wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. So that can stifle your high agency.
I see.
Whereas if you come from more wealthy background,
Right.
your parents taught you you can do anything. Your parents probably questioned the rules for
Right.
you and probably had others break rules for you, or
Right.
so it can really an immigrant background can really mess with you in
Okay.
terms of being high agency. uh, it can help because you saw your parents hustling,
Right.
and now to you it's natural to hustle and to be resilient. But it can also mess with you because you're the kind of people that never ask the hard questions.
I see what
You're
you're
just
saying.
grateful to be here,
Right.
and it can. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Right. Well, well, and again, that's where my head kind of was running with, because it's like what's beautiful though is some of these things that, make you feel pressured in one sense, but then also grateful. You've kind of that double-edged sword. You can share that with other people today and really, and that's why I love what you were just saying about how you were talking to all those young people and saying, no way, you can do this. You can be high agency because here's why. And if you hadn't gone through those experiences with your family or with, the culture you grew up in, maybe you wouldn't be sharing that with other people. And then they wouldn't have that access to this incredible, I can't get over this enough, high agency that
I love,
is
yeah, it blew my mind
very
too. It blew my
empowering.
mind.
And
Yes,
you feel
yes.
like, hey, okay, this is me. I can do this. I can work with the tools that are right here with me. And for once, nobody's in my way. That is such I mean, literally get your shoulders to go down a little bit there. And that you teach this to people because you provide courses, correct?
I do. I have a course. It's how to transition from your career, let's say in privacy and compliance and cyber, into AI governance. And one of the things that I teach is high agency.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that
That
I
is so,
teach.
yep.
It's so key to your career. You think that your career depends a lot on your boss or the company or the industry, but you have more agency than you think. And it's something that I learned the hard way. And
Okay.
so I teach it to others as well.
I love that. I used to work for Habitat for Humanity, and their big thing was giving a hand up, not a handout. And that is such a hand up to people. You are taking these lessons you learned. You don't have to do that. You could keep that information to yourself and go on totally fine with the rest of your life, But when you're thinking like that, and you're thinking, hold on, other people that I've met before. I've met this person that I'm talking to, not literally, but you get what I'm saying. Like I've met this person 5 years ago when they were in a similar situation as this college kid or whatever it is, and or this mid 20s, getting ready to make the first big leap of their career and they're nervous about it or something. Like I love that you are so open to getting that out to them and saying, well, look, this is where I went through this and this, and let me tell you, this is the best way to go about it. So that is awesome. I wish there was more people like you doing that for young people who are also figuring this out. We act like it's all like people over the age of 90 that are like, "What's ChatGPT?" Whereas like I'm 28, and I'm a parent, and I've been using technology since, I mean, I was 11, and smartphones and all that, and I still to this moment am like, holy smokes, I didn't know ChatGPT could do that. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
what really inspired you to start things like your YouTube channel and like these types of courses, as we're kind of getting close to the end here? Like what got you to think of that as an idea? Because you were in Meta, you had mentioned working with Congress, and now you're with the Homeland Security. So what then made you be like, oh, I am gonna ask ChatGPT what microphone do I need to use? How can I what made that click happen?
Yeah. So what made it click for me was being asked. Like
Oh
a
wow.
lot of people reached out to me
Yeah.
asking, "Hey, Soribel, what cert should I take to transition into AI governance? What should my kids study in college?
Right.
What should I do? What this?" And asking me questions that some I had answers to, some I didn't. But I know that there's this curiosity and there's this, thirst for knowledge and
Right.
for AI information that goes beyond hyping things up and telling people, "Oh, take my $1,000 workshop
Right.
and you learn everything." So I wanted to provide that kind of information to a wider audience, because LinkedIn is, it does what it does, right?
Yeah.
The algorithm,
LinkedIn's
show
LinkedIn.
yourself. Yeah. So I think being on YouTube, YouTube has some of the largest audiences out there.
Right.
And it's a very mixed audience, right? There's young people, there's old people, there's
Right.
those all kinds of people. And so I see that thirst for knowledge, and for answers.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to launch this that YouTube channel.
Right.
And my course is people asking me, "Hey, how do you transition? How do you transition into AI governance? How do you do it?" And it's something that I can, spend an hour with them and tell them.
Okay.
But if I want to scale myself and help them implement what I tell them,
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it is through a course.
Right.
Yeah.
So and I mean, that's such a natural progression too with the things that you're doing. Is like you've built such a beautiful trust with people, and now they have this opportunity to learn deeply from what you're teaching them. And that is, I mean, I think you are the coolest person. That is such an amazing way of like going from like, I like to call it, like the old way of thinking to the new way of thinking, which is like, you could have stood there and stood your ground and said, I'm not gonna change. I'm not doing it. And the world needs to be this way. But you have just taken it by the reins and just run with it. That is so cool. And that fits right there with that high agency, right there with that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So uh, if I could ask, what are from two different generations perspectives? So like from a much older crowd and then from a much younger crowd, could you answer the same question for me from your experiences? What what has been the most shocking thing that a young person and a much older person has come to you about AI with, that made you really stop and think, holy cow, this young person is asking this type of a question, and then the same thing with an older, individual.
Hmm. I have to think about that. Um, but usually young people are more interested in seeing, like, "Oh my God, how do I survive in these times when there are no jobs and entry level jobs are disappearing? And, what do I do? What do I study? Do I leave like college
Right,
and go become a plumber?"
right, right,
Um, so that's one of the things, and that's why I called myself the AI therapist,
right.
because I was seeing a lot of anxiety in young people, in a lot of, all this messaging that we're sending them. And it's like, wow, people really need some kind of hope and, help them with this anxiety. And I think the older generation also has this kind of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with some of the same things, and they're asking on behalf of their kids
Oh,
and
wow.
on their own behalf as well.
That's
And
interesting.
so, yeah, I've gotten some of the same questions from both generations, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
both generations are grappling with the same questions and anxiety, and the same worry and concerns. um, so yeah, so I get these questions from young people, and I get similar questions from the older generation, which is like, what do I study? Like, what certs do I take?
Right. Right.
How do I transition? How do I present myself as as an AI savvy person?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's hopeful in a way because it kind of allows you to kind of get a gauge on, okay, everybody's thinking about this right now. Everybody's thinking about it this kind of way. So this is how you could approach that. That's fascinating. I'm writing that down. I want to remember that. That's an interesting perspective, like from a human perspective, for me at least. I think that that's fascinating because there's so many different ways that can go. Because okay, now we can ask the $1 million question that everybody's always wondering, which is, all right, what do you think's going to happen over the next 25 to 30 years? What do you think, to kind of finish this out here, what do you think the world is going to look like 25 to 30 years from now? Not 50, I don't want to go that far, but like in the next, you know, young person born yesterday and now they're 30. They're like my age. All right. How do you see the world changing? And how do you see AI doing that to the world in a good way or a bad way or both or whatever you want to include in there? You kind of can have free reign, like just what are your projections?
Well, if you had asked me maybe a month or two ago, I would have said, "Oh, the robots will take over, and we may probably all be dead, and this and that."
Right.
But now I'm seeing a lot of the same people that were talking about AGI,
Mhm.
artificial general intelligence, kind of like walking it back a little bit
Okay.
and saying, we need to calm down and stop talking about it and start talking about technology, like the good aspects of AI. And I think, there's this school of thought that says that AI is going to become just any other technology, like normal technology. So my thought is that AI is here to stay. It's not going to go away. It's
Okay.
not going anywhere. Um, I think there's going to be the hype is going to die down a little bit over the next few years.
Okay.
A lot of investment went into it. Some companies won't survive after the hype. Um, but then AI will become technology, like normal technology, like electricity,
Oh, wow.
uh,
Okay.
like, like all like the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Okay. So
internet.
you think it'll probably
So
look about it that normal?
yeah, I mean there is, I think there still is that threat of automation
Okay.
and replacement. I think it's still there. That threat is still there because AI is powerful technology.
Right.
But I think we're coming to a point where we're like, okay, maybe it won't take over and kill everyone.
Okay.
Like
Well,
maybe
that is,
we will
yeah.
try.
Yeah. Well, especially if we get some more high agency people to start acting on that too. I'm to use your phrase. I mean, because that's also something interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with like the butterfly effect, like a small change has a huge effect outcome on things. Like you have no idea how much you just talking to a set series of young people and in-betweeners and everywhere in between, how that's going to ripple. And I think that you are doing something really beautiful and really wonderful for the world at large with using your cultural experience, your private tier like experience and especially your international experience. So on behalf of the world, I want to say thank you. um,
Thank you.
uh, and thank you so much for sitting down and just talking with me for about an hour on this type of stuff. It's been fascinating to get to know you, and I hope that we can have a second conversation, maybe on down the line. But for the most important part of all, how can people find you? What are the best ways to find you? I know we talked about YouTube, we talked about Substack. Are there any other places that would be great that we're going to link down below for our audience here to find more of Soribel?
Yeah, well, I live on LinkedIn. I'm always there. It's my addiction. Um, so LinkedIn is the best way, but I also have a YouTube channel, um, and that I want to start doing more with in the next few months. And I have a Substack, where I also want to do more.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I'll share those with you, and I'm also going to share my course, my AI governance course, in
please,
in case people
absolutely.
are interested.
Awesome. Well,
Yes,
thank you so much again. All of that is definitely going to be linked down below. And again, I hope we can have a second conversation because this was just awesome to understand your perspective on all of this. And Ms. Sorbo, thank you so much for giving us a conversation between you and I. And we hope to talk to you soon.
sounds great. Thank you.